we spoke about Emil Smith-Rowe going to Fulham and how, shrewdly Fulham appear to be building up their squad. And I do hope that Ryan Sessegnon, by the way, finds his form again, has a season of fitness more than anything else, because we know how talented he was, and that could be a very good signing. The suggestion, and Smith-Rowe is part of this, Eddie Nketiah looks like he's going to be on his way from Arsenal, perhaps to Marseille, and a couple of the Gunners' academy talents, Mario Crozier-Dewberry and Chido Obi-Martin, are leaving the club as well. And again, we're talking about, putting trust in your community of fans, but also in your young players coming through the youth system. And the suggestion has been made that Arsenal, and in particular Mikel Arteta, are not good in that regard. He's not giving the youth at Arsenal a sufficient opportunity. Is that a fair accusation to make about the way he manages and the way the club runs things in this regard? Yeah,
but by the way, I think just in terms of Fulham, a couple of really good ins. Joao Paulinho would be a big miss, massive miss, because I think he's been a superb player for the club. I think Arsenal now, and I understand why you've asked the question, and I think clubs should always be trying to get a good an academy as possible, and try, if you can, if they're good enough, to bring them into the first team. And this is something that didn't happen with Chelsea for a very long time, and then it did. And now it looks like the academy players are just sold for kind of pure profit, which needs to be sorted out from a PSR point of view. But Arsenal now are and Mikel Arteta in particular, so close to winning this Premier League title. Marcus, it may sound harsh, but he can't worry about bringing young players in and getting them time to bed in the first team. If they're not almost immediately good enough, he cannot risk bringing these players in. He needs... I think it'd be really harsh if they don't win the title this season and people call him a failure, but people will. And he's up against arguably the greatest club side this country's ever seen, arguably. So he's only got to think about the here and now. We talked about that sort of striker that he might need. This is someone he needs to get, a ready-made, world-class striker. And you can turn around and say, well, the amount of goals they scored was good enough to win the title. Yes, but can you rely on Kai Havertz again, this coming season to score that? So as much as I'm very much for the academy and players coming through, Arsenal are at that level now where the number one most important thing is how do we win the Premier League title? It's not how do we bring players through from the academy. And he has to worry about that and not say about, okay, we need players coming in. There could be an argument when you're 4 and 5-0 up, then you can start to bring those players in and get them experience. But until you're 3, 4, 5 up with 10, 20 minutes to go, he has to win games. We've seen the bar that Pep has raised, English football too. How many games did they lose last season, Arsenal? 3, 4 max.
Yeah. And
yet still they didn't win the title. They have to win almost every game, and they cannot afford to think about the future. They have to think about the here and now.
Well, I get that, but it's a shame not also just to have half an eye on what's going to happen down the line. I take your point. He needs, having come close so many times, he needs to win this thing to finally ease the pressure that's been building up over the past couple of years. But it's a bit of a shame, certainly on the face of things, that the price you pay for that is maybe to ignore 2 or 3 of your most talented youngsters who, in the cases of Mario Crozier-Dewberry and Chido Obi-Martin, are now heading to Brighton and Manchester United.
Yeah, where I think, the 16-year-old was offered 30 grand a week, and Arsenal are only willing to offer 15. And if a player wants to go there for money, and I get it, it's a big difference between 15 and 30 a week, but at that age, it should be nothing about the money. It should the money will follow if you get your career right and your head right. I'm not saying he hasn't, but that's a big move to move him down south to up north as a 16-year-old. So, look, Jude Bellingham has done it, but we're talking about a generational talent there. I think again, I'm not saying he's doing one or the other. I'm sure he has got an eye on the academy. But at this moment in time, how do Arsenal go from second to first? It's not by bringing in your academy players. You can do that in training. You can see the standards set in training on a day-to-day basis. You can have them in the squad. You can even have them on the bench. You can even bring them on, as I say, in the last 10, 15 minutes. But to start a youngster where you're not 100% sure that you're going to, rely on him in a game that you need to win, and they do need to win almost every single game now with Pep City the way it is, I don't I completely understand where Mikel Arteta's coming from.
Although I will remind you of Alan Hansen's famous comments many years ago, you don't win anything with kids. Oh, well, yeah, you do.
Yeah, but again, there's always an exception to every single rule. And they were a special breed. And who else has come through with the likes of, Scholes, Beckham, Neville's?
That was a unique situation, wasn't it? Tony in Gloucestershire has been in touch, says, all I have to say, Wrexham, if you want great foreign owners who've built the club back up with the full backing of the community, there's your example. The right owners pick the right club and deliver the right outcomes.
They've been very clever. From what I hear, it's not as if they've been putting loads of their own money into it, but because of who they are, they're bringing the attention. They've been very clever in how they've done it. It's why they are where they are in their own field. So, yeah, absolutely. Look, let's see how Wrexham get on in League One. It's a jump from League Two to League One, but it's not a massive jump, but it's a strong division there now. There's some big teams that have come down. Them and Stockport have gone up. That's going to be a tough division. I'm hoping, obviously, my Charlton will be able to get out, but I'm not 100% sure this particular season. Let's see in 2 or 3 years where they are, and if they are willing to get or able to get into the Championship and then make that jump to get into the Premier League. Everyone's going to be turning around and say, well, Ipswich did it. Again, that exception to every rule.
Yeah, but with Hollywood backers, anything is possible. Dan's been in touch as well. He's a Saints fan. He says it feels like Southampton have done more business than ever before. We've been very proactive. Russell Martin has put together a squad that can definitely stay up. Would you agree with that?
I think it's going to be tough for Southampton. I really do. I think last season we saw 2, if not all 3 teams thinking, okay, do you know what, they're going to really, really struggle. I think the job that Russell has done was sensational. I thought his tactics in that final against Leeds were superb. And once they went 1-0 up, I never thought there was any doubt. He has done well. I think making sure Flynn Downs stayed, and that obviously cost money because he was on loan last season. I think he was massive to them. There's no doubt about it. And there's some good buys that they've done. Ben Brereton Diaz, I was speaking to Dean Ashton out on that golf trip in Tenerife, and he likes him. And how many strikers do you get for $6.5 million nowadays? There's not a lot. So he's bought really well. I'm fascinated to see again how his style will suit, because it didn't work for Burnley. How will it work for Southampton when you're having a massive step up, and it is a massive step from the Championship to the Premier League?
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.